Hello BookTube, my name is Dennis and you are watching The Intellectual Reads. Today I am bringing you another review of a book I recently finished, my first book of 2020, and a 5-star read which I am certain is going to end up on my top 10 at the end of the year. So, without further ado, I will discuss today The First Circle by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I purchased this book quite a while back ago, and recently at the beginning of the year when I was doing a unhauling of different books that I owned that were either shabby, old, or that I had read or wouldn't read, this was one of the books that ended up on that pile. And then I said to myself, I've always wanted to read Solzhenitsyn. He had died in 2009, I believe. That was about the time that he came on my radar. So I had purchased this book for 50 cents at a Strand bookstore outside, and I never got around to it. And somehow I just didn't want to let it go, so I thought I would read it to begin the year. This is truly a marvelous book, and I am so happy that I have discovered this author, because to me he is an embodiment of being put in a kind of setting that Dostoevsky would develop, and then having to rely on Tolstoy to describe it. I will go more into depth what I mean by that. But first, I think it would be helpful to discuss the plotline, the setting, and what makes this book so fabulous that I want to sing to the top of my lungs and recommend it just about to anybody. The book is titled The First Circle for a reason. It is taking place at a Sharaska in Malvino, which is right outside of Moscow. A Sharaska is a high-end prison which houses some of the most intelligent engineers who are working on multiple projects. There are different units who have specific tasks at hand, whether it be to develop a phone line for Stalin so that he can talk to anybody he wishes and the phones couldn't be tapped, or the conversation deciphered even if the phone was to be tapped. Other different projects are taking place, and there are extreme deadlines. These Saraskas, or let's just call them high-end prisons, house 3 types of classes of people. The first class is Zaks, Z-A-K-S. These are the prisoners. They are either serving 10-year sentences, 10 years and then 5 years to be reformed, or a maximum of 25 years. And instead of being sent to the gulags, or even when at the gulags and there's a project on board, they would be summoned to these prisons. And the reason for the title, The First Circle, is I think in reference to Dante's Inferno, which is the outer circle of hell. This is kind of as good as hell can get. We follow the Zeks and their way of life. They are doomed prisoners with no freedom in sight because of the long sentences and the different notes and stuff being taken on them that could extend their sentences even further. And to be honest, nobody's really getting out. As is evident by following the free workers that also come to this Sharaska, life is no better on the outside than on the inside. There are certain worries that a free person is always under as well. Stresses that are due to societal problems. And these societal problems are caused by the third class, which is the ruling class. These are the higher ups, leading all the way up to Stalin. And we see that the fear and the injustices and the unreasonable demands on society comes all the way from the top and permeates all the way to the bottom. Solzhenitsyn was a journalist, so it's very conceivable to understand that this book has a multitude of characters. Rather than following a single plot line, a single storyline, this is more of just an in-depth portrayal of a society. During the years that Stalin had the most influence on Russia after the war, so you're thinking late 40s, early 50s, and the crimes and injustices that take place in such a society. It is a psychological book. Psychological because you can fully start to understand and rationalize with the characters. One of the most strongest points of this book is that, in fact, the Zeks, the people at the bottom, seem to have the easiest of lives, because it is very harbored here psychologically that when you take away everything from a man, the man has nothing left to lose. So while all of society, including the higher-ups, because Alexander Solzhenitsyn so beautifully describes how quickly a person can fall from the throne in this book. You could be on the top of the top branch of a tree, and it'll take milliseconds. Overnight, you can be at the bottom where the roots are. And therefore, everybody in this society is in danger. And perhaps it is when you've lost everything that you can become a human again. And I will give you a quote that's towards the end of the book that I think describes this psychological aspect beautifully. So, the quote comes from Nerzhin, a character here who's being sent away to the gulags and refuses to be rescued by assigning himself to another project at this first circle. And it's actually a Russian proverb. So he says, "Thank you, Dmitry. I had the chance, but for some reason I'm in a mood to try an experiment for myself." The proverb says, "It's not the sea that drowns you, it's the puddle. I want to try launching myself into the sea." I think this quote, this proverb, is speaking to the whole novel and the psychological, philosophical aspect of it. Of that, when you're trying to navigate puddles, you're always in danger. But once you're out at the sea, you have nothing to lose. And this is kind of a philosophical point preached among, the Zeks here, is that they've already lost everything. You can't threaten them anymore. You can't take anything more away from them. You've taken away their liberty. You've taken away their possessions. You've taken away everything. And they have found a way to survive. And that way to survive is through work. And so it is very powerful to see that it's in fact the people on the bottom that somehow show the most heart, the most humanity, and perhaps are the ones who are surviving this chaotic nation under the power of Stalin the best. This is also a very sociological work. It explores the effect not only on the men at these gulags, not only on the conduct of the leaders and the unrealistic deadlines that they have to follow, but it also very accurately describes the sort of terrain through the woman's eyes. You have many wives here portrayed that can't see their husband for years, who can't write to them because if it is found out the fact that they have a husband in jail, their careers are shot. Their papers in school are not accepted. They're expelled from universities. They have problems. They're looked down upon. And even the free women, they can't find suitable husbands anymore. All the men are in the gulags. You know, the ratio is significantly in a disfavor for a woman in this situation. So everybody in such a society has a way to be scared. And when you are running on fear, you are very apt to lie. You're very apt to cover everything up. It is just such a in-depth perspective of a story that does not feel like a story that could have happened in humanity. It almost reads like a science fiction in dystopia. And I will reference The Milkman here because Anna Burns, I read this book last year, I actually did a review on it, so I will link it down below if you want to check it out. But she does a very similar thing here. And here she adds to this dystopian effect by not naming it Northern Ireland, not naming the location the story is taking place, even though we as educated readers, knowing her background, can decipher the fact that the story takes place in Northern Ireland. And the fact that Solzhenitsyn does give you a location does not make this book seem any less like a dystopian science fiction novel. And he portrays everything so beautifully on the society that is at the cusp of madness, that it is given through so many perspectives. You know, his journalistic background here is really at play to such an advantage that he leaves no person untouched in this work. Everybody gets a voice. Whether you're Stalin, you get a couple of chapters. Whether you're the lowest of the lowest, you get a couple of chapters. Whether you're a wife, whether you're a daughter, whether whoever you are, you will find a voice in this book. And the scope here is one of the most amazing things. Another thing that I loved about this book is just how much heart it has. That in the toughest and worst situations, that you could still find heart and bring it out to be something of worth and beauty is just amazing. You know, we have scientists living here. There's even an artist who paints huge paintings in this Sharaska that are then sold off for pennies so that they can be placed on the walls in high-end apartments of these leaders who themselves every day go to sleep in fear. It is just the most scariest world one can paint, that it doesn't even seem real. And yet it's only been 60 years or 70 since the time frame of this book, and that is just frightening. I would recommend this book to just about anybody. If you read a lot of books and such a topic as Hitler and the Nazis and the concentration camps are of interest to you, if you love dystopian fiction, if you love Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, if you have any kind of just love for a book that describes society and can find beauty in it, then this author is for you. While reading this book always brought to me the idea that, as I said at the start of this video, that this was a situation that only Dostoevsky in his works could bring us to. But it is written with the beauty of a novel like War and Peace. This book has a 4.2 rating on Goodreads. I mean, for me, it's 5 stars all the way through. I don't doubt that this will be in the top 3 books I've read all year. And I am going to read all of Solzhenitsyn's writings because to me, he's just an amazing author, and if I sat at a table with him, Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, I would value them all equally. And I think it is a disservice to you if you don't pick him up. And I have no idea why this guy doesn't get the kind of recognition that Dostoevsky or Tolstoy would get. I mean, I guess he won the Nobel Prize, and that says enough, but I would love to see him read more, because I think it's such a important book. Last thing I will say is that, as you see, this copy is really beat up, and it kind of gave me satisfaction after some time to read this, because this is the kind of copy you would probably find in a jail cell. And you know, there's a lot of books discussed within this work as well. And what you find is that one of the most valuable possessions that a Zec can have is a book, because they are traded among prisoners, and there are so many great books discussed here. At the start, you meet the first prisoner, and he is always carrying around a Hemingway novel. Then, you know, later in the book, Monte Cristo is discussed, and errors are found in his escape. Other notable Russian poets are discussed, and it is just, if you're into literature, there's a lot of things here about books as well, as there should be in a smart society. Again, this is the first circle. It's a portrayal of life outside of Moscow in a high-end secret jail. And I am looking to go darker and more difficult with the next of his books, which is the Gulag Archipelago, and I am sure the situation will be much dire here. But I enjoyed the scope here so much, only because being in close proximity of Moscow, this is able to give us so much more in terms of perspectives, all the way from the top to the bottom. And again, I will leave off with that. Thank you for watching. If you have read Solzhenitsyn, please comment and let me know what you thought of him. If you have not read Solzhenitsyn, you should. And I would love to know if you plan on reading him in the future, and any other comments that you may have. So thank you for watching. Pick this book up, read it, thank me later. Bye.